Hello, 8th graders. Today we are going on to the second part of Chapter 9, the Jacksonian Era. So we are opening up to page 170 in your history books. If you want to have your questions while you listen to me reading along, you can do it that way. And you can always pause it and answer questions as we go. So we are on Understanding the Jacksonian Era. Caucuses and campaigns, appropriate for this year. The years of Andrew Jackson's presidency are often referred to as the Jacksonian Era. This period of American history was characterized by a new spirit of democracy. The frontier states west of the Appalachians, where young men were judged by what they could do rather than who they were, took the lead. Nearly every white male in western states held the right to vote. Soon, the eastern states were allowing more political democracy. To appeal to voters, political parties devised new campaign methods, including political speeches, parades, banners, slogans, and barbecues. Voters also gained a new voice in selecting political party candidates. Before this time, candidates were often chosen by caucus, a closed meeting of party leaders. This system gave common people little voice in nominating processes. In 1832, both major parties held presidential nominating conventions. Party members in each state elected delegates to attend those nominating conventions where they would choose the president candidates. The nominating convention has been used since 1832 to select candidates for presidents. The spoils system. After his election, President Jackson had awarded faithful Democratic Party workers with an appointment to the public office. Senator Marcy of New York summed up the new system when he said, "To the victor belong the spoils." Spoils refer to property seized from the enemy. If you think of the spoils of war, if you've ever heard that term, it means getting all of the value and all of the riches of the enemy that you conquered. The spoils system soon became common in state politics, especially in New York and Pennsylvania. President Jackson introduced the spoils system into national politics. When he came to Washington, many government employees had held their jobs for over 25 years. Thus, a permanent class of government officials had developed. President Jackson believed in short-term governmental appointments. Although the spoils system opened up the political process to more people, it often put unqualified people into government posts. Changes in the West. When Jackson came to Washington, D.C., public lands in the West were being sold for $1.25 per acre. At that time, the price was reasonable, but not cheap. President Jackson made it easier for people to buy land for family farms. To promote improvements in the developing lands, Congress approved federal funds to construct the National Road, running from Cumberland, Maryland, westward across several states. Indian removal. When unsettled lands in the new western states became scarce, whites demanded that the Indians be forced to give up their lands. In 1830, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act, which required that American Indians living on the land east of the Mississippi River move to lands farther west. President Jackson supported the policy, and the government provided funds to help the Indians in their move. The Sac and Fox tribes of Illinois were forced to move west of the Mississippi, but in 1832, their chief, Black Hawk, led them back to their former home near Rhode Island. When they refused to leave, the governor of Illinois called out the state militia. Many Sac and Fox were killed in Black Hawk's War. Black Hawk was captured, and the remaining Indians were returned to the westward territories. In the South, the Cherokee and Seminole tribes resisted the move. The Cherokee had established farms and ranches, developed a written language, and even drafted a constitution in an attempt to establish a state in northwestern Georgia. Many had even become Christians, but the Cherokee were removed west along with the others. The Cherokee called their long trip to Oklahoma the Trail of Tears. About 15,000 Cherokee were moved in the fall and early winter of 1838. Many became ill along the way, and about 4,000 died before reaching Oklahoma. really tragic point in our country's history, and really a shame that these people who were here first had no say in the land that they owned before westernized settlement came, and so they were forced out of their land. The abolition movement. By the 1830s, many people wanted to abolish slavery. For this reason, they were called abolitionists. Before 1830s, the abolitionists worked for the gradual abolition of slavery. Many Christians supported gradual abolition, believing that if slavery could be eliminated gradually, the South might preserve its economy. In the 1830s, radicals gained control of the abolition movement in the North. One of the best-known radical abolitionists was William Lloyd Garrison, who published an abolitionist paper known as the Liberator. Garrison called for an immediate end to slavery. Fellow newspaperman Frederick Douglass published an abolitionist paper called the North Star. Some radical abolitionists called for kidnapping slaves, violence against slaveholders, and bloody slave insurrection, or revolution, in the South. Such talk concerned many Americans. Still, the idea of gradual abolition had many supporters. The situation grew worse in 1831 when Nat Turner, a black preacher, stirred up a slave rebellion in Virginia. About 60 white people, mostly women and children, were murdered in the Nat Turner Revolt. Many people blamed Garrison and his abolitionist propaganda for the bloodshed. In November of 1837, a mob in Alton, Illinois, destroyed the printing press of abolitionist editor Elijah Lovejoy. After the Ohio Anti-Slavery Society helped Lovejoy obtain another press, the mob attacked again, setting fire to his printing office. Lovejoy was shot and killed while defending his news press. And so as technology began to grow and you have people who are opposing the beliefs of the southern states with slavery, there's a lot of articles and newspapers and propaganda pamphlets being made and distributed. And so that's causing kind of an uprise of people now who are turning to the side of abolitionists, and those in the South did not appreciate it. And so there was a lot of bloodshed and a lot of disunity over this time. A new political party, the Whigs. Martin Van Buren becomes president. In 1836, as President Jackson approached the end of his second term, he picked Vice President Martin Van Buren, 1782 to 1862, to be the next Democratic candidate for president. Van Buren would have to run against the Whig Party, or the Whigs, a new party made up of former National Republicans and members of other political groups. In English history, the Whigs had opposed the king. Jackson's opponents felt that he had been too strong as a president, calling him King Andrew I. The Whigs were united only by their dislike of President Jackson. Some Southerners felt he had bullied South Carolina, some Westerners thought he should make it easier to buy land, and some businessmen felt he was too hard on the national bank. The disunity of the Whig Party in supporting 3 different presidential candidates assured victory for Martin Van Buren. President Van Buren inherited the problems of the Jackson administration. When Nicholas Biddle's Panic of 1837 descended on the country, many of the people blamed Van Buren for the economic depression. To make matters worse, the farms in the Midwest reaped a poor harvest that year, and the demand for cotton in the part of England textile mills dropped. The price of cotton fell by 50%. On the very day of President Van Buren's election, word raced to Washington, D.C. that a major cotton brokerage in New Orleans had declared bankruptcy. Soon, Wall Street, the financial center of New York City, was in an uproar. Although Van Buren restored some confidence with sound, gold-based money and completed Jackson's tasks of eliminating the national bank, people associated him with hard times, and thus he served only one term, 1837 to 1841. Tippecanoe and Tyler 2. Old Tippecanoe. The first Whig president, William Henry Harrison, 1773 to 1841, of Virginia, was a veteran of many Indian wars and a hero of the War of 1812. His role in the Battle of Tippecanoe earned him the nickname Old Tippecanoe. His vice presidential running mate was the former governor of Virginia, John Tyler, 1790 to 1862. A handy and popular campaign slogan for the Whigs was Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Harrison won the election, but he held the office of president for only 1 month. Just 31 days after giving his inaugural address without an overcoat in a chilly March rain, he died of pneumonia. Harrison was the first president to die in office. President Tyler. The Whigs never expected John Tyler to become president. They had chosen him for vice president in order to get the Southern vote, but Tyler supported states' rights and opposed the tariffs. He also supported the sound money and private bank policies of former President Jackson. Thus, Whig leaders did not approve of President Tyler. When Tyler vetoed an attempt to recharter the national bank put forth by the Whigs from the Northeast, his Whig cabinet resigned. Only one man remained loyal to the president, Secretary of State Daniel Webster. All right, we have some checkup questions to do today in your packet if you have not been doing them along with the reading. So the questions for today are, how were men judged in frontier states west of the Appalachians? What is the spoil system? Who introduced it? What did the Indian Removal Act require? What did the gradual abolitionists support? Name 2 well-known radical abolitionist newspaper publishers. What was the former name of the Whig Party that opposed Martin Van Buren? Historically, who did the Whigs represent? Explain how Van Buren won the presidential election in 1836 in spite of Whig opposition. What made Van Buren's term as president so difficult? How was the first president to die in office? How did he die? How did the Whigs feel about Tyler? And then identifying Jacksonian era, caucus, nominated convention, National Road, Black Hawk, Trail of Tears, Nat Turner, and Old Tippecanoe. Next time we will move on to the next section, which is better relations with Britain.